I don't know that many people in business, but I do know a couple, and they are freaking out.
Yeah.
And particularly people who are in fashion. And I don't mean high fashion. I mean just general, like the clothing business. And I spoke to someone yesterday, and of course this is all just anecdotal, but he's like, you have no idea. There are so many businesses that are just going to go out of business because there's no way they can afford to, and he said, like, they're smaller ones. There's no way they can afford to pay these tariffs. And he said, right now, try and go get, he said, containers are going to be super expensive. They're going back up to like COVID levels.
Shipping containers?
Shipping containers, because they're not in the flow of what's going on. So many have stayed in China because they're not sending stuff over here. They're going to different directions. So, you know, the way this works is the containers get sent to from China here with stuff, and then somebody rents them to go back to some other place. But if they're not here when you need to rent them, they're super expensive to get, because you gotta get them to come here. And of course, there's a lot less imports coming because of the tariffs. He said people are going to probably, like the 10% people are going to, they'll still send stuff, but everything's shutting down from China, he said. He also said, try and find a bonded warehouse, which was something that I wasn't quite sure what it was. But what a bonded warehouse is, apparently, is just like, it's basically the functional equivalent of like an escrow account. You put your goods into the bonded warehouse, and they're not subject to the tariffs yet. But as soon as they come out, they are subject to the tariffs. And so a lot of people are just storing all their stuff there, hoping this all blows over. He said a lot of people have like sort of like front loaded and bought in stuff, which is ironic too, because we have the biggest trade deficit in March that we've had in maybe ever.
Because everyone was buying.
Because everybody's buying, trying to get in under the before the tariffs.
When we were getting ripped off.
When we were getting totally ripped off. And the one rumor, he said, that's going around, he says he has no idea if it's true. He said that Trump is going to roll back the China stuff, the China tariffs on Mother's Day, like as like some gift to moms or something. And he said, and I said, what possible sense does that make? And he goes, it's just an excuse, because everybody knows this is going to be a disaster. And you can read it in Secretary of the Treasury Besant. Is it Besant? Is that how we say his name?
It's Besant.
Besant. Secretary Besant.
He does have the kind of elitism that might, you might infer that he refers to himself that way.
So Secretary Besant, the Treasury Secretary.
See it on his face, and even in the podcast audience, we'll be able to hear how he stammers the entire time.
It looks like he's one of Cruella de Vil's friends.
He's on CNBC, and he really, I, of course, am in no position to criticize someone for stammering at all, but he does it in a way that really makes it feel like he is just doesn't want to be there.
You're heavily involved here. You have said they need to de-escalate and start that process for us to get going on trade talks. Have they made any effort at this point?
Pause it for 1 second. Just to be clear, the question is, you have said that China needs to de-escalate before we get into talks. And by de-escalate, it means stop resisting.
Yeah.
The 140% tariffs.
Stop flexing on us.
50% tariffs, in my understanding, is essentially an embargo. If you do 50% tariffs, you're basically saying nothing's coming. Don't ship anything. You're not going to ship anything. It basically shuts it down. It just makes it impossible at that point.
What China's doing is like working with South Korea and Japan, which is not, I think, what Besson would consider a de-escalation.
This guy also told me, like, the cost, just, and I've mentioned this dynamic before. If a good comes in and it's bumped up by 10%, right? It was $50 and now it's $55. The distributor, they don't, if before they would have 10% fee on it, which would have been $5, right? On 50, right. I take $5 out of that. And now their fee is $5.50 because it's 10%. And it goes on. And then the markup is also done by percentage. It's not done by dollar. We're just going to keep the $5 markup as opposed to the 10% or 50% markup, whatever. So,
and even if your friend's hunch is right, and there's this exit ramp for Mother's Day, which is psychotic, it doesn't necessarily matter, one, in terms of like this impact on the economy and the precarity and lack of investment that this has engendered, but also on the incentive that this has created for corporations to price gouge regardless of what the impact is.
Yep. We are past the point of no return, at least for some hit on the economy.
Yep.
It's just a question of how severe it's going to be.
And start that process for us to get going on trade talk. Have they made any effort at this point?
I think we could see substantial progress in the coming weeks. We'll see. That I think it's Stein's law, that which is not sustainable doesn't continue. So 145%, 125% tariff levels are the equivalent of an embargo.
Yep.
And we're reading every day what's happening with factories in China. And from an academic point of view, I can tell you that the history of trade battles, we are the deficit country. The surplus country always has the most to lose.
So they need to make more gestures. What is it that you're looking for, and is that happening? Is there a negotiation about the negotiation?
Yeah, we'll see over the coming weeks, and we'll see what President Trump wants to accept.
Right. I mean, have they offered anything on the fentanyl, for instance, precursor ingredients?
Only what they have said publicly. So, and I can tell you.
I mean, he's so desperate. The deficit country always survives better. Well,
the home team wins game 7, 75% of the time. Exactly.
In this instance, the dynamic may be a little bit different than it has been in the past.
Right.
Because you know what I'm suspecting? That there's never, ever, ever, ever been a time where someone just out of the blue decides to launch a 140% tariff on somebody. I have a feeling it's like, yeah, home team wins 75% of the time. But not when they have decided that
they're resting their starters.
They're resting their starters, or they're going to wear their pants on their on the tops and their
right.
shirts on their bottoms. Like maybe that's not. But Besant can't even say like there are talks. I mean, he's out there trying to essentially provide some reassurance.
Yeah.
For the markets, people in business.
That's been his whole role this entire time.
But he can't do it.
Of course not, because it's insane. He admitted it's basically an embargo in that clip. I think they may have said that before, but saying that explicitly as we're in this incredibly precarious time, when we're this reliant on Chinese imports, to say it's functionally an embargo also doesn't make it seem like you're entering into good faith negotiations, nor does it back up Donald Trump's claims that this is going to make us the richest country ever again. I get the sense
he's trying to communicate that to Trump.
By calling it an embargo on cable news. I forgot. Yeah, it's almost like Trump 1.0, where cabinet officials have to go on TV to make pleas to him like Republicans used to.
I mean, I think that is clearly, he is going on to either communicate to Trump or to try and get people who are in Trump's orbit to go in and say these things, because I don't think Trump's listening to him. Besant, I can't figure out your name. I'm not going to listen to you.
Why would China give us 1 inch? Because they're so. I saw this article in FT that said that like over 80% of Apple manufacturing, like all of their supply lines, are within China. This is going to affect us every day that this goes on. China strengthens its economic position in the world. So unless the U.S. drops it, we're out of luck here.
Yep. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.